Welcome to Train Hot Dog, the podcast where I talk to myself on a train. Today's Train Hot Dog, we're going to be figuring out who named Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. But first, Rider Mail. And before Rider Mail, I get to find Rider Mail in this long message of list of emails I've received. Here we go. This rider mail is from the 425 area code, and this rider writes, "Hey Train Hot Dog, how's it hanging? Just wanted to say that I think the topic of white dog poop was a little weird as topics that you would come up with, until the whole recent one with Larger Luke and Luke Prime. Wondering how did you find those subjects, because they're really odd. Also, I have suggested for subject Pollock jokes." Man, that's a great idea. Jokes about artist Jackson Pollock. It's really low-hanging fruit, too, because his art is ridiculous. I remember my grandparents always telling a bunch of jokes and basically indicating that apparently Polish people are stupid, and I always wondered what's up with that. I'm guessing maybe some World War II thing. Yeah, the Polacks got themselves invaded by Nazi Germany. What a bunch of idiots. Anyway, pleased to investigate. Bye. I think Google's automatic transcription software has gotten better, because that's one of the more cogent rider mails I've ever received. Yeah, I'm going to write that down. In fact, I'm going to write that down right now. I'm going to do a Train Hot Dog someday about what's up with Jackson Pollock. But for now, this rider mail is about Sir Francis Drake art, so let's do some research along those lines. For Sir Francis Drake Brevet. Sir Francis Drake Boulevard is an east-west arterial road in Marin County, California, running from just west of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge to the trailhead for the Point Reyes Lighthouse at the end of the Point Reyes Peninsula. It is named for, this is vital information, but it's not what we're looking for. I want to make that clear right now. It is named for the English explorer Francis Drake, whose ship the Golden Hind landed somewhere along the Pacific coast. Yeah, guys, I've played Uncharted. Of North America in 1579, claiming the area for England as Nova Albion. Drake's landing place has often been theorized to be at what is now called Drake's Bay, no apostrophe. The Drake's Bay Wikipedia page also has no apostrophe in its page, on Point Reyes, the western terminus for the boulevard. In the 1960s, the majority of the route of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard was to be expanded into State Route 251. This plan was not implemented due to strong opposition by environmental groups. Alright, so in that case, let's add some search terms. Who named Sir Francis Drake Boulevard? The results for this are the Wikipedia page for Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Sir Francis Drake High School named that. Francis Drake. Did Drake really do it? Like, did he have children? Is that what you're asking? Oh, this is in Marin Magazine, so it's probably relevant. Sir Francis Drake, The New World Encyclopedia, Sir Francis Drake ebook. East Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Larkspur, California. Oh, that's a Dirty Harry filming that's at dirtyharryfilminglocations.wordpress.com. I'm reading that, at least a little bit. Sadly, I have to report that another major section of the Dirty Harry Railway Trestle has recently been demolished. Further demolition of the Dirty Harry Railway Trestle on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Source: Marin Independent Journal. You can still step into what's left of the picture by following the guide below. What is... Okay, I feel like this is needs a lot of context that I don't have time to track down. but I'm sure it has something to do with... Okay, here's a paragraph. The entire scene from the railway trestle to the quarry takes place in an area less than 1 mile long. If you visit the site, you will appreciate that Don Siegel's geographic perspective and timing were maintained to perfection. Okay, apparently there's a railway trestle scene in Dirty Harry. Alright, let's just do this. Who names boulevards? Who names boulevards? Street or road name on Wikipedia. A street or road name, or odonym, that's a great word, O-D-O-N-Y-M, is an identifying name given to a street. The street name usually forms part of the address, though addresses in some parts of the world, most notably most of Japan, make no reference to street names. Buildings are often given numbers along the street to further help identify them. Names are often given in a two-part form, an individual name known as the specific, and an indicator of the type of street known as the generic. Examples are Main Road, Fleet Street, and Park Avenue. The type of street stated, however, can sometimes be misleading. A street named Park Avenue need not have the characteristics of an avenue in the generic sense. Some street names have only one element, for example, Broadway, the mall, and the beaches. The street name can also include a direction, the cardinal points east, west, north, south, or the quadrants northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, especially in cities with a grid numbering system. Examples include East Roosevelt Boulevard and 14th Street Northwest. These directions are often used to differentiate two sections of the street. Other qualifiers may be used for that purpose as well. Examples: upper, lower, old, new, or adding extension. Main Street and High Street are common names for a major street in the middle of a shopping area in the United States or in the United Kingdom, respectively. High Street in the UK. The most common street name in the US is Second or Second. Etymologies. That's almost what we want. No, I want to know who names these things. Who names streets? Landmarks. Self-descriptive names. I'm going to try the search again. Okay, the autocomplete here is who names highways. From names to the numbers, the origins of the U.S. numbered the highway system. On Sunday, August 30th, 1920... Oh, we're getting ready for a story here. On Sunday, August 30th, 1925, AAA President Thomas P. Henry and General Manager Ernest N. Smith stepped into their Cadillac and began a 1-week, 24-hour-a-day drive from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, California. They wanted to demonstrate how the large, powerful touring cars of the day could give motorists new thrills for their, quote, jaded road appetite. They arrived in San Francisco on Friday, September 4th, after a run that took only 96 hours. With the aid of AAA affiliates, Henry and Smith had little difficulty finding their way until they reached western Utah, where a signboard signaled the parting of the Lincoln Highway, a direct route from New York City to San Francisco, and the Victory Highway, New York City to San Francisco via Baltimore. Henry and Smith turned the Cadillac to the right and took the Victory Highway, but soon came to a hill. 6 roads led over the top, Smith wrote in his account of the journey, and each road was worse than the other. He found his way by walking ahead half a mile to be sure the road he thought was correct would carry them through. For the next 2 hours we pitched and tossed, dropping into chuck holes and raising clouds of dust. These two leaders of the country's largest auto club were experiencing firsthand why these were the final days of named trails. The trouble with names. The trails were a product of the pioneer days of auto travel. Government took little interest in interstate roads. Most long-distance trips, even by the most avid advocate of the automobile, took place in the comfort of the nation's railroads. Although named trails can be traced to the 1890s, the movement began in earnest in the early 1910s with the National Old Trails Road, Baltimore to Los Angeles, and the Lincoln Highway setting the pattern. boosters selected a route over existing, often just barely existing, roads, gave it a colorful name, formed an association to promote the trail, and collected dues from businesses and towns along the way. The associations published trail guides and newsletters, held annual conventions, and promoted the improvement of and use of their route. The goals were to promote the road, the good roads cause, and economic opportunity for the cities and businesses along the way. By the mid-1920s, trail associations had named over 250 routes. They included transcontinental routes such as the Dixie Overland Highway, Savannah, Georgia to San Diego, the Lee Highway, Washington, D.C. to San Diego, the Old Spanish Trail, St. Augustine, Florida to San Diego, the Pikes Peak Ocean to Ocean Highway, New York City to Los Angeles, the Theodore Roosevelt International Highway, Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, with a Canadian stretch through Ontario, and the Yellowstone Trail, Boston to Seattle. North-south routes included the Atlantic Highway and the Pacific Highway along the coasts, and others such as the Evergreen Highway, Portland, Oregon to El Paso, the Jackson Highway, Chicago to New Orleans, the Jefferson Highway, Winnipeg to New Orleans, the King of Trails Highway, Winnipeg to Brownsville, Texas, and the Meridian Highway, Winnipeg to Houston. There's like two more paragraphs of highway names, trail names rather, so I'll skip those. The trail associations marked their trails by painting signs or insignia on telephone poles, barns, rocks, or any other surface facing the road. In some cases, the associations worked with auto clubs to mark the named trails. The Automobile Club of Southern California, for example, signposted thousands of miles of roads, including many routes outside its home state, as a service to its members. In the early days of the automobile era, the named trail associations provided valuable service, but as the number of named trails increased, and the number of automobiles increased, so did the problems caused by the routes. Many named trails served little transportation need, or were routed through dues-paying cities rather than the shortest, best route for motorists. The Dixie Highway illustrated the problem. It was actually a Dixie Highway system of alternative routes on the theory that motorists could drive to Miami on one route, return home on another, and still be on the Dixie Highway. The Arrowhead Trail from Salt Lake City to Los Angeles, to cite just one other example, was favored by the state of Utah because the Arrowhead kept Los Angeles-bound motorists in Utah for hundreds of miles more, desolate miles though they were, than the more famous Lincoln Highway. Rivalries among trail boosters left motorists uncertain of which route to take. In Kansas, for example, motorists could choose between the new Santa Fe Trail, backed by a trail association formed in 1910 to promote a road along the course of Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad through the state, or the old Santa Fe Trail, backed by an association formed in 1911 to support a trail roughly following the historic trade route of the 19th century. There's more like examples here. The Jackson Highway was one of the earliest rails to be proposed by a woman, Miss Alma Rittenberry, as she was known, of Birmingham, Alabama. A member of the Birmingham Equal Suffrage Association, the Poetry Society of Alabama, and the United Daughters of the Confederacy, Miss Rittenberry conceived the route in 1911 to honor General and President Andrew Jackson, not New Jackson. It linked Chicago to New Orleans. After promoting the route tirelessly, she gradually lost control of the route, which was shifted to run through eastern Mississippi with a branch to Montgomery and Selma. She finally lost control of the Jackson Highway Association in January 1917 to men who supported the routing of the branch between Birmingham and Nashville via Gadsden and Huntsville instead of the beeline route via Decatur advocated by Miss Rittenberry. Feeling betrayed by men he had trusted who had played thunder with her association, played thunder is in quotes, she resigned, saying, "If Andrew Jackson knew the unchivalrous act of you men, he would turn in his grave. He was at least courteous to women." A week later, she formed a rival association to support a new route. Okay, come on. This is like all incredibly detailed history, and that's cool, but it's not questions were also being raised about the intentions of the promoters, were they public-spirited citizens, or were they simply lining their own pockets? The name trail, okay, yada yada yada. The name trail phenomenon was also hurt by the perception that many trails were intended mainly to benefit their skip-by-night promoters. Is that like what they used to call fly-by-night? I bet that's the predecessor to fly-by-night before they invented flying. And when they invented flying, they immediately changed the new idiom. In 1922, when the Bankhead Highway Association met in Phoenix, the Tombstone Epitaph complaint, that's in italics, so I guess it's the name of a magazine or a newspaper. The Tombstone Epitaph complained that the association spent little time talking about highway improvements, instead devoting its time to the past history of uncertain men, as politicians or descendants of U.S. Grant or Jeff Davis, or the blue blood in him. Wisconsin shows the way. These concerns were shared by Wisconsin highway officials. State highway engineer Arthur R. Hurst told the National Road Congress in January 1918 that the trails were established with, quote, a great deal of gusto and barrels of paint. He added, the ordinary trail promoter has seemingly considered that plenty of wind and a few barrels of paint are all that is required to build and maintain a 2,000-mile trail. Wisconsin was the first state to replace trail signs with numbers. 1917 state law that required the creation of a state trunk highway system of up to 5,000 miles included a provision requiring uniform guide and warning signs for the system. Before developing the guide and warning signs, Wisconsin considered the marking methods in use elsewhere, such as a system employed in some eastern states that assigned one color to denote east-west roads and another to denote north-south routes. However, a numbering plan seemed best. The trunk lines were numbered in order of their length in miles, from 10 upward, the idea being that every highway number should contain 2 digits. The standard marker was a triangle with State Trunk Highway at the top, and the number in larger figures in the center, and the abbreviation WIS in the lower point. Arrangements were made for the counties to begin simultaneous installation of the signs at an agreed-upon 0 hour on May 24th, 1918. Within a week, the counties had posted the signs on telegraph and telephone poles, fences, culverts, trees, and walls. As Hearst put it, the plan was to be rather profuse with the road markers because the traveler welcomes the kindly reminder that he is still on the right road. Hearst's successor, Wisconsin highway engineer John T. Donahue, recalled, previous to its installation, the ordinary method of directing travel was by referring to forks in the road, schoolhouses, red barns, and various other more or less convenient objects. Immediately on the installation of the marking system, all that was necessary was to say, for instance, take number 12 until you meet number 21 and follow 21 to your destination. A single, concise sentence, incapable of being misunderstood, took the place of the intricate and incomprehensible directions which previously were the only possible method of directing travel. Some states followed Wisconsin's example, but with the continued promotion of the booster associations, the name trails retained their popularity. Indeed, the names were commonly used by all concerned, including the BPR, the American Association of State Highway Officials, AASHO, newspapers, map and guidebook companies, and the public. Even in states that adopted numbers, the names often lingered. Iowa began numbering its highways in 1920. But the state continued to register named trails under the authority of a 1913 law designed to protect the trail names that had been developed by the communities. The Iowa State Highway Commission registered 64 named trails between 1913 and 1924. By the 1920s, highway officials realized that named trails had outlived their usefulness even as their numbers continued to swell. The Federal Aid Highway Program, begun in 1916, had entered a golden age when the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1921 limited federal aid highway funding to a federal aid system comprising 7% of each state's road network. 3/7 of the federal aid highway mileage had to be, quote, interstate in character. With the state and federal governments identifying the main roads for the federal aid system completed in 1923 and providing funds on a 50-50 basis to surface thousands of miles of these roads, the need for private organizations to promote individual routes was diminishing. In addition, the number of registered motor vehicles had increased from less than 500,000 in 1910 to nearly 10 million in 1920. Over 26 million would be registered by 1930. Although long-distance travel by auto was still, as the Lincoln Highway Association put it, something of a sporting proposition, the time when highway transportation could be left to private entrepreneurs was quickly passing. By the fall of 1922, Donahue, Walter F. Rosenwald, Minnesota's maintenance engineer, and A.H. Hinkle, Indiana's superintendent of maintenance, took a trip through their states to explore ways of standardizing the marking of highways. Throughout the early years of the automobile era, important messages were conveyed to motorists in whatever way struck the fancy of the messenger. One 40-foot sign in Tennessee warned motorists, "Drive slow, dangerous as the devil." Railroad highway crossings. One of the greatest danger of these early days inspired the most creativity, with a skull and crossbones as a favorite warning. "Danger, go slow," a typical sign read. The three men decided the best alternative was to assign special meaning not to the words on the sign, but to the shape of the sign. The underlying thought, Rosenwald recalled, was that if each shape had a definite meaning, it would be a great advantage for night driving, as undoubtedly the shape could be distinguished long before the words could be. The three reported their findings to the Mississippi Valley Association of State Highway Departments when it met in Chicago in January 1923. The association adopted a signing and marking plan based on their ideas. Round warnings at railroad crossings, octagonal stop, diamond-shaped slow warnings, square caution or attention messages, rectangular directional and regulatory information. The signs were to be black and white. The association, which forwarded its recommendations to AASHO, did not adopt a shape for route markers, but recommended that they differ from the other signs. In 1924, when AASHO held its annual meeting in San Francisco, Hinkle spoke on how shall interstate highways be named and marked. Properly marked routes would be, he said, a great convenience to the motoring public. By marking the shortest routes with suitable grades, officials could reduce the cost of traveling by thousands of dollars. He liked the idea of the first numbering properly located. Highways, and then naming them because the name is frequently connected with some historical event or geographic term, which will more readily recall to mind the location of the road. However, he believed that in the case of interstate roads, the BPR should make the final decision on those, with states being given an opportunity to suggest the name. During the same meeting, AASHO's Subcommittee on Traffic and Control of Traffic recommended that AASHO ask the Secretary of Agriculture, in cooperation with the states, to undertake the task of designating a comprehensive system of through interstate routes. The subcommittee also recommended the adoption of uniform directional and warning signs based on the Mississippi Association's proposals. For luminous signals, the subcommittee approved the red, yellow, green sequence of stop, caution, go. For non-luminous signs, the subcommittee basically adopted the Mississippi Valley Association's recommendations. One variation had to do with color. At the suggestion of Minnesota, the subcommittee recommended the use of a light green background, preferably lemon yellow instead of white, with black lettering for the signs. On route markers, the subcommittee agreed with the Mississippi Valley Association that it should be different from the other shapes, but made no recommendation of what the shape should be. The report was signed by temporary subcommittee chairman E.W. James, who was chief of BPR's Division of Design. Edwin Warley James, a native of Ossining, New York, was a graduate of Philip Exeter's Academy in 1897. He continued his studies at Harvard University, where he was a 1901 cum laude graduate. He completed 2 years of engineering studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. After several years with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, James had joined the BPR, which remained his employer for the rest of his career. On November 20th, AASHO adopted a resolution recommending the immediate selection of In conclusion, we don't know who Francis Drake Boulevard was named after or by.